I'll be fine. I can cycle in a skirt. That's what they do in Call the Midwife. Sometimes when your car starts screaming at you, it makes you a little bit more... Hello everybody and welcome back to my podcast, Esme's Country Life. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about my trip away to Oxford. Yes, I actually had some time off and got up to lots of different things. There was also one big accident that happened on that trip, so stay listening to hear about what happens with that. But anyway, before we begin, I just want to say a huge thank you to the sponsor of the podcast, Red Post. Red Post is an equestrian and country store based in the UK, but they also ship all over the world. And at the moment, if you listen to the last few episodes, you will know that they are doing their big summer sale. It's not on for that much longer, so if you want to get the good deals, look at it quick. Also, there might be some things that you just need to restock on anyway, if that's lotions and potions, new shampoo, fly sprays, maybe your horse has gone and got a hole in its fly mask and you need a new one, or maybe you need a new pair of competition breeches or white breeches because you also got a stain on. Now is the time to stock up while they have a summer sale. I want you guys to get the best discounts, so go and check it out at redpostequestrian.co.uk. Also, the summer sale is on for a limited time only, so if you're listening to this in like December, then what are you doing? Anyway, stay up to date on the podcast. Anyway, let's get into today's episode. So, I don't really know where to start with this because I had a little weekend away, I had a little weekend off, like a weekend off social media, which was so lovely. I wasn't gone for long. But yes, I just had like a nice little break. So I thought I would tell you what I got up to on that trip, because like always, whenever I go away, whenever I go and do something, it always ends up being very eventful. Lots of things happen. So yeah, starting off, you might have heard in last week's episode that, I've got a new boyfriend. So there we go. I don't really know. I feel like I should give him like a little nickname, because my whole family, we call him Batman. Not because of like Batman as in I'm Batman, but Batman because he is an ecologist, so he does lots of like surveys, and at the moment it's like bat survey season. So so I'm gonna be, I guess on the podcast I'm gonna be calling him Batman. That's gonna be his nickname, so there we go. But anyway, so it was his birthday over that weekend, and I went away with his family and him, and it was really lovely. But I feel like it's always like it's a big test in a relationship, you know, going away for the first time, also going away with their family as well. So it was a very, very lovely trip. Very, very grateful. I was very honoured to be taken along because we haven't been going out for too long. But yes, so anyway, we decided to go to Oxford because over this summer, that's where his brother is working. So he could join along on the trip with his boyfriend as well. So that was lovely. But yes, started off on our trip. So we had a bit of a road trip. We went in my 4x4 that you guys, if you listen to the podcast, will know. My car is called Digby. A bit of a random name. I am that person. I like to name my cars. So far I've had Frida, Ivy, and now we have Digby. So Digby is the only boy car I have, but he's quite a big boy. He's a big 4x4. So I thought, I don't know, I just felt like he suits his name. Anyway, so there I am talking about my car for a reason here, because on the way to Oxford we thought, how about we stop in Marlow? If you don't know where Marlow is, it's like a cute little town kind of in between Oxford and London, and we stopped off there, had a little bite to eat, bit of a snack, and anyway, he was like, oh, Marlow's really pretty, how about we drive through the centre and go over the bridge? Now, if you know not Marlow Bridge, you will know what I mean, but I didn't know what I was getting into. He was like, I know that the work van can fit through there, so you should be fine with Digby. I was like, okay. Because basically this bridge is quite an old bridge, and they don't want big lorries to go through. Now, Digby is he's a little bit of a wide boy. He's probably as wide as like your average transit van. So I was driving along and I was like, Batman, am I going to be able to fit through here? I was pooing myself. I was so nervous. I've never been so scared. Digby goes into what we call panic mode because he's like a modern car. He likes to scream at you when he gets a little bit scared, which I don't know. Some people love the beep beep beep. Some people hate it. I'm a little bit in between. Sometimes the beep 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 on cars where you're going to accidentally reverse into something or whatever, it's saved me a few times. But sometimes, especially if you're like trying to parallel park and loads of people are watching you and it's a little bit of a stressful situation, sometimes sometimes when your car starts screaming at you, it makes you a little bit more, worried and anxious and that kind of thing. So I was driving along and I was like, okay, look out your window, I'll look out my window. There was probably about half an inch on each side for me to get through this thing. Now, you might think, oh, is it because the bridge is really narrow? No, the bridge isn't even that narrow. Like a normal car could just drive through. It's because they don't want heavy vehicles to go through. So anyway, I got through the first one. I was like, phew, done it. Perfect, brilliant. We made it through. And then I realised that there was another one on the other side. And I was like, brilliant. Okay, we can do this. I'm going to girl boss my way through. I'm a big girl with my big car. I can get through. Anyway, I managed to get through. Digby was no Digby's were harmed, no scratches were made, it was all good. And I turned around and I said to him, I am not going over that bridge again in this car. But it was a lovely bridge. I'm glad I went over. Was it setting me up for another interesting Digby journey? Yes, it was. We'll get to that a little bit later. There was quite a lot that happened on that journey. So we were driving along and there was this car that's like stopped in front of us and we're like, oh my goodness, why is this car stopped? Another car stopped. I thought, is there like something in the road? Is there a dog? That kind of thing. There was a Zimmer frame in the middle of the road, like a little old person kind of like walking kind of frame. And we were like, what is going on? Like, there's some grandma gone on the loose and left it behind. So anyway, this guy had stopped because it had somehow rolled into the middle of the road and somebody stopped so no cars would get tangled up in it. So that was a little bit of a different thing to spot in the middle of the road. But anyway, we're very glad that the car in front of us stopped and moved it out of the way. They were a very good Samaritan. And then we finally got to our destination. So we were staying in I would definitely recommend. They are a little bit pricey, but because it was a birthday, it was a big kind of celebration weekend away. So we were staying in a Landmark Trust building. So the best way I can describe it is, if you guys know what the National Trust is, where in the UK we have this thing called the National Trust, where there are lots of big old manor houses, stately homes, that kind of thing, that often get sold because they are very expensive to run and people, run out of money, that kind of thing. The National Trust buys them up and then keeps them in kind of good condition, because then the general public can come along, have a little nosy around, have a little walk around. So my whole childhood was basically going to National Trusts. Also, there's sometimes like castles and things like that at them as well. So lots of really cool kind of British history and that kind of stuff. So it's basically walking into a Bridgerton kind of house, basically. So yeah, it's a little bit like that, but with smaller old buildings. So this one was called the Old Parsonage, and it was like just off the, I'll say, we were on the kind of like river, which is actually the River Thames, which is the one that goes through London. But obviously we were further along the river because we were Oxford way. So yeah, technically I've swam in the Thames, which sounds a little bit weird to say because the Thames where like London is, you do not want to swim in that. That is some dirty water. But anyway, so sorry, we'll get back to the swimming in the river later on in today's episode. But yes, so we arrived and it was this beautiful old house. Can't lie, there were some bits that were a little bit creepy, especially at night. But no, it was beautiful, like these beautiful stone windows. It was so picturesque. And I would say if you are from abroad and you're staying in the UK, even if you just stay for one night, I would recommend staying in somewhere like that, because honestly, it was like going back in time. It was lovely. And again, I had my little social media detox that weekend. So I was just like, had a nice old chill time. So we arrived. Now, there is a little parking area that was off the street. So to get into this off-street parking area, kind of like in the garden, like the kind of driveway, you had to go through this archway, this kind of stone arch. And we didn't realise this when, I didn't book it at all. I just was very kindly invited along and had a good old jolly. But his family went in a van because we brought all the paddle boards, we brought all our bikes. We were having like a proper family weekend away. Their van could not fit through. Digby could just about fit through, but because it was going in, that was okay. There was a little bit of a, yep, I think you're gonna make it. Digby's roof is not going to be scratched off. But it was getting out on the way home. I don't know why, but for some reason going in front ways, it was just super tight. The angle, it wasn't going well. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go out bum ways, guys. And I tell you what, it worked. It was fine. For some reason, I've become like a reverse parking girly recently. I was never that person, would always go front in. But now, I don't know why, I'm more confident going backwards. Maybe it's because I can't see where I'm going. Well, no, obviously I check my reverse cameras. I look behind. It's all good. I'm a safe driver, I promise. But anyway, yes, there we go. So we arrived. We were all good. We got to pick our bedroom, and we picked the biggest one because he was the birthday boy, so that was really lovely. What was quite funny was the little corridor going up to our bedroom, because it was such an old little cottagey kind of thing. They had this like carpet on it, and it was almost like an Aladdin's kind of carpet. It looked like it was almost moving because the floor was so kind of creaky and wobbly, but it was just so pretty there. So anyway, when we first arrived, we had a little explore in the garden, and there was this massive mulberry tree in the middle, and it was in fruit, so we might have picked a few of the mulberries because they were just going to fall on the ground and go to waste. So we had a little snack, and then we went down to the river, and because the garden went right down to the river, so you could go straight onto it, so we blew up all the paddle boards, and oh my goodness, I am always that person that very kindly borrows and steals other people's paddle boards, but I've also never really been the person to ever blow them up before, so it was like a proper workout having to blow up this paddle board. And luckily I've got my my mucking out horse riding guns here, so I was okay, but I did get a little bit tired near the end. So anyway, we went out on the paddle boards, and that was so much fun because, as you guys know, I'm a little bit of a nosy person, and being on the paddle boards, you could, like, basically, as you were kind of like rowing, do you row on a paddle board? Paddle, that's probably the correct word to use. As you paddle along on the paddle boards, we could like basically look into everyone's back garden. So we're like, oh, they've got a nice one. Oh, they've got a nice little pagoda there. They've got a nice little outdoor seating area. That's very cute. Oh, I would choose that house if, like that kind of thing. And there was also a lot of canal boats as well. So as we were going along, we're like, oh, that's a nice one. That was painted nice. I like the flowers on that one. So we were very nosy, and we went on lots of little trips down. And as we were going down, Batman was like, oh, there's supposed to be a weir somewhere down here. And if you don't know what a weir is, it's basically a kind of like, it's a part of the river where there's basically like a mini waterfall or a bit of a drop. And we were going along, we're like, where is this weir? Where is it? And we were like, oh, we'll go left here because we don't want to get stuck in the weir. And we thought, maybe this way. So we went down this very residential route. And I can't lie, the whole time I was paddling along, I was like, if we were in Florida, I would be absolutely petrified, because it would be like the perfect grounds for alligators to live. And then, I tell you what, when we were going down, it really made me think of the Disney film, The Princess and the Frog. I don't know why. I guess that's kind of New Orleans, isn't it? Kind of based in. But we were going along, and I was like, I could just picture like a little alligator or something just popping out of the water. So luckily, there were no alligators, but you do hear some stories of like, ones that have escaped from zoos, or people who have had a pet one that like, led it into the wild. I think people do that sometimes, which obviously is not good for the animals or the natural species of Great Britain. But you hear people do that with like turtles and things, or tortoises. Anyway, going back to yeah. So anyway, we were paddling along, and then we saw the weir, and we were like, oh no, abort mission, quick, paddle away. Luckily, there was a big sign being like, we're ahead, and we're like, okay, let's not go further down. His parents, apparently, they went past the weir, they went round it, and they carried on going. They weren't freaked out about it. I was particularly freaked out about it because I was like, I do not want to be going down this waterfall and drowning. They went round it, and they went all the way to the pub. There was this pub down the river, and I was like, oh, we should have gone further down. We should have gone to the pub. We should have brought some money. To be fair, we were paddling along, and we knew that there was a pub down there, and we were like, oh, we should have brought some cash with us or something. Although there would have been that awkward thing of us like in our swimming clothes, like me in my bikini walking into a pub. I don't think that would have been, I don't know, I guess it depends on the vibe, depends on the pub. It was a hot sunny day, but I don't think I would have felt comfortable walking around like half naked in a pub. And then we would have to like drag our paddle boards with us. And imagine if we got like our paddle boards stolen, then we'd be like, how we would have got back. We'd have to swim through the river. I don't know if that would have been very good. To be fair, there were quite a few people swimming in there. And at the end, I was like, when we got back, I was like, you know what? It's a really hot day. I really fancy a dip. And as I was, swimming along, my ecology boyfriend was like, just make sure you have a shower afterwards in case you get scabies. And I was like, what? Because I did like say like, are there any leeches or anything in here? And it's like, no, there shouldn't be any leeches. And I saw lots of other people swimming. It was like, oh, you might want to have a shower afterwards. I was like, I do not want to get scabies. So don't worry, guys. I had a shower afterwards. I do not have scabies. It's all good. But apparently that was something to watch out for. So yeah, technically I have swam in the Thames. I was very careful not to put my head under just in case, like swimming in dirty water, that kind of thing. I won't talk about the Olympics and swimming in the Seine because we've all heard about that and didn't end up too well for some poor people. But anyway, moving swiftly on, I had a great time swimming in the water, and then got all washed, dressed up, went out for dinner. That was really lovely. Walked to the local pub, had dinner there, had a little sit by when we did. I was going to say we did a pub crawl. We went to 2 different pubs, which is a pub crawl for me. I'm not really a going out kind of gal. But there was this lovely pub that we sat on, and it was right by the river. And where we were staying was also near a is it called a lock? Which is quite cool. If you don't know what that is, it's basically, I think the way to describe it is, it's like a river lift or elevator for boats. So it's where one bit of a river is a little bit higher than the other, and they kind of go in, and then they go up or down, and then they go to the other part. So the next day, we went for a cycle. So we met up with the full gang. Everyone was there, and we cycled all the way through Oxford. So we went across the riverbank, and that was really cute because we got to see all of the Oxford University kind of like boathouses on the way there. So that was really interesting, and seeing all the like rowers on the river. And there were a few people that were like trainers that were like cycling on the side of the river with their little microphones on, and they were shouting at all the people who were rowing, being like, "Get away from the bank, you're gonna crash into a tree." Well, that's what we saw. Maybe that was a beginner person. But then we also saw some of the like university students, and they were proper into it and, you know, really going for it. And there was that one person, it's called the Cox, I think, at the front of the boat, and they were just like screaming. I feel like I would be the screaming person. I wouldn't want to do the rowing. I just want to sit there and be like, go faster. They probably say some other things rather than just go faster, but I don't know what they say. But anyway, so we were cycling along, and on our cycle there were a lot of, I don't know if you guys have these in different countries, but there are these things called burrs, and they're basically like little seed pods that kind of have these, I don't want to say spikes because they're not actually that spiky, but they're kind of like sticky, and they have these like little long bits on, and if you throw them at somebody, it sticks to your clothing. So we were playing this like battle game of like cycling along, picking up birds from the side and trying to like hit them on each other. And I am not very good at throwing. I don't have the best aim, so I was the person that ended up getting a lot of burrs stuck to myself, but it was good fun. I enjoyed it. And then we arrived in Oxford. Now, the riding on the riverbank, that was great. That was perfect. Nice, easy breezy, nice and relaxed. When we got to Oxford, though, cycling in a city, is Oxford a city? Yeah. It's a city, kind of. So if you're cycling in a city, it's a little bit more terrifying because there are buses, there are taxis, there are cars, there's the general public. So we were, you know, cycling along, la-di-da-di-da, and then his younger brother was like, "Oh, I know a shortcut. We'll go through the park." What we did not realise is that when we went into the park, there were no signs being like, "No cyclists, no." So we thought, "Oh, this will be fine, like nice wide paths, that kind of thing." We were cycling along, and the amount of people that gave us death stares and were like so it was all the local people as well. It was all the dog walkers. They were like, "You're not allowed to cycle here," but like, "You're not allowed to park there, sir." They were like, "You're not allowed to cycle here. Get out of the park!" Like getting really sassy at us. And we were like, "Sorry, we've never been here before." We were probably like those really annoying tourists that just like get in the way. But anyway, so we quickly escaped out of the park, and we ended up parking our bikes at his brother's like a little house apartment place that he was staying at for work over the summer. And then we had a little walk around Oxford, which is really nice. Now, the way I would describe Oxford is, if you, a bit like, I'd say, if you are a big fan of Harry Potter, don't bother going to London. Go to Oxford or Cambridge or York. They would, I would say, are the top 3 towns. Now, I would say they have, there's a lot of Harry Potter tours, actually, when we were out there. You can see there were quite a few people like dressed up in their little costumes and little people going around. There were, to be fair, Oxford was very busy, and we were there on a very sunny summer holidays weekend. So there were a lot of tourists about, and I can't complain because I was one of the tourists. But it was honestly beautiful. Like, I think Oxford is how people that aren't from the UK kind of would expect London to be like. Obviously, London does have some really pretty, cuter, smaller little bits. But I think when most people go to London, they just go to either the bit that's on the Thames or Oxford Street. Like, they're the main kind of areas, and I'd say they're a little bit more kind of city-like, when Oxford definitely has more of like a towny feel to it. There are lots of like little lanes that you can go down, and cute little houses, and very, very old buildings, and it does feel like you're transported into a Harry Potter kind of universe. So that is very cool. There's a lot of ghost tours as well. We didn't do that, but I've done a ghost tour in York before when I was younger, and that was really cool. So even if you're not into like that kind of stuff, I always think they're quite fun. If you're like a cynical person where you're like, I don't really believe in ghosts, it's still interesting, and you hear some stories about the history and that kind of stuff. But we didn't do that on the trip. We had his younger brother as our tour guide, as he'd been living there for a few months over the summer. But yes, that was really fun. So we had a little mooch about Oxford. We went to one of the museums as well, and I had a little look at all the museum-y things because we're all big nerds and like to look at all of that. Also, as I've become older, I feel like I appreciate museums more. I don't know if that's because when I was younger, or actually even in lockdown, to be fair, I had a big Animal Crossing phase. Some of you might know there's a game called Animal Crossing on the Nintendo Switch, and back in the day I used to play it on my Nintendo Wii and my Nintendo DS, so it's probably my favourite game back when I had my like gamer phase when I was younger. But there's a museum in that, and I don't know why, I've just always been very fascinated by museums. So we had a little look around that, looked at all the old paintings as well, and we'll go around and be like, oh, I like that one, I'd have that in my house, or oh, that's got some nice colours. Anyway, a little bit boring, but we had a nice little look around that. And then what did we do after that? We just had like a little mooch about Oxford. There's lots of different bits and bobs to do. And then after that, it started to get a bit hot. It started to get a little bit busy. Oh, we had a look around like a market as well, which is really nice. We got some snacks from there, and we also there was like some vintage kind of shops, did some like thrifting, that kind of thing. So that was cute. Anyway, then we cycled home, had some afternoon tea, which was lovely. I feel like that's such a British thing to do. His family as well, they are very like into, I don't know, they're very like not farmy, I don't think that's the right word. They do have a lot of homemade things. So there's like a big selection of like homemade jams and that kind of thing. And they even made jam while they were there with some of the mulberry. I don't know if I should say that or not. I guess, you know, we were staying there. They were just going to fall on the ground, or the birds were eating them. So we made some mulberry jams. So there we go. But I feel like that's such like a British thing to be like, we went back home and we had afternoon tea. And then we went out on the paddle boards a little bit more. The second time we went out on the paddle boards, we had another battle. And that was us two versus his brother and his brother's partner, and we basically, conkers was the second weapon of choice. If you don't know what a conker is, now these ones, they were not very ripe, so they weren't that spiky, because these actually sound quite lethal, but they're like these green, or chestnuts. Chestnuts the bit inside the conker? But anyway, so we got them, and they're like these like little spiky balls, around like a little bit smaller than a tennis ball, maybe the size of like a nectarine or something. And we were paddling along, getting them off the trees and chucking them at each other. And then some of them, because they'd land in the water, would be like, quick, paddle over to that one, get more ammo. So we had like a little conker fight on the river, which probably looked a little bit dodgy. Also, we didn't know this until we left, but just as we left, we saw a sign that said you had to have a paddleboard license in order to paddleboard on the Thames or on the river. We did not know that, so I'm pleading ignorant here. We did not know that, so please do not tell us off for not having a paddleboard license. But we were very safe, we were very good, we got out of all the boat's ways, and we had a lovely time. But yeah, to be fair, where we were staying, it was near the lock, so there weren't really that many boats going through, because most of them got there and were like, sack that off, we don't have to go through this lock with the lock keeper and have to go in this like river lift or elevator, we'll just turn around. So there weren't actually that much kind of traffic going through that bit, and obviously there weren't all the rovers or anything there, because they were the other side of the river near Oxford. But where we were staying, it was probably about a 10-15 minute cycle into the centre of Oxford, so we really weren't that far away from Oxford at all. Then on the day after that, we were like, let's cycle to Abingdon, which is another kind of nearby town. I would describe Abingdon as like a little Oxford. Like Oxford without the tourists is not as old. There's not as much going on there. Like we went there because there was a craft beer place, and his family are very into beer, and I'm not, which apparently was a big thing when he first announced me as his girlfriend. They were like, do you like beer? And I was like, no, that's not for me. Luckily, his brother also doesn't like beer, so I'm not the only one in the family. I'm not like shunned out, being like, no, she cannot be with us. But anyway, so we went for a little cycle along. Now, this part of the story, we're going to go back to the beginning, because this is some key information for the next part of the story where the big disaster happened. So, my Digby, I was going to say my car, my Digby, to get my bike in the back of him, even though he's a big 4x4, the way he kind of is, I couldn't fit my bike in unless I took my bike's wheels off. So I took my bike's wheels off, put it in the back of Digby, used him to transport the bike. Anyway, when we got there, put the Batman very kindly put my tyres back onto my bike. Now, we had a very bumpy journey to Abingdon. Now, this took us quite a while. There were 2 different cycle routes that we could do, and we thought, oh, we'll do the one along the river. That sounds lovely. What I didn't realise is that apparently it's quite common for Batman on a holiday to take us kind of on what I'm going to call what my family call a magical mystery tour, which is, the journey is often a little bit longer than you expect. It's like, oh yeah, it'll only take half an hour and a half later, that kind of thing. And it was like, oh yeah, it looks nice. I've looked at it on Google Maps, that kind of thing. And what we didn't realise is that this pathway was a little bit overgrown. So we were cycling along. Luckily, I'm a tough country gal. I can keep up. I'm all good. There were some overgrown branches that maybe we had to duck under, and some bits that are a little bit muddier, and little bits that are a little bit bumpier, and little bits where it was just a little bit overgrown and probably not the best for cycling. But we made it. We made it to Abingdon. We made it to the craft beer place. Literally, I cannot make this up. As soon as I put my brakes on to stop, when we arrived at this like industrial estate to this craft beer place, my back tyre fell off. And when I tell you, I was like, oh my gosh, I was in shock. I was, luckily, as it fell off, it was as I was becoming stationary. So I didn't fall off my bike, and I was all good. But I did think to myself, oh my goodness, I've just had that long bumpy journey all the way here, and that back tyre could have fallen off at any moment. It was so lucky that my tyre fell off at the right time. And Batman, he felt so bad. He was like, I'm so sorry. And it's like, it's fine. I also helped you put the tyre on. And to be fair, when I was the last kind of like half an hour, last like 20 minutes, 15 minutes of the journey, when I went to change gear, my chain was making chain noises, which it probably shouldn't do. Like sometimes, when you change gear, it makes like a little kind of noise for a little. That was not a very good chain noise from me. Little sound effects here on the Esme's Country Life podcast. But anyway, it was making the chain noises, and normally it only makes that for a little bit when you change gear. But it carried on making them, and I thought, maybe I just need to change gear on the other side of my handlebars. Carried on doing it, and I thought nothing of it. I thought maybe something needs greasing, so maybe something needs a little bit of WD-40 on. I don't know. That always seems to do the trick on things. That seems like if anything's got a problem, bit of WD-40, that's the stuff apparently. Anyway, so I just thought, maybe it's a bit of an old bike. We'll see. I didn't realise it's because my tyre was falling off. So there we go. And even the lady, there was a food truck there, and even the lady at the food truck was like, oh, that was lucky with your tyre falling off. That happened here, not when you were cycling along. And I was like, yeah. So I was a little bit scared cycling on the way home that my tyre was going to fall off. And also, we were all like, because we arrived, and then we kind of came to the realisation that we'd done this strenuous journey through all of this undergrowth, and we thought, oh no, we've got to do the cycle back now. Luckily, there was a different cycle route that actually had a proper tarmacked cycle path all the way back to Oxford and all the way back to where we were staying. So we were like, phew, thank goodness. So anyway, we had a cute little pizza, a cute little rest in Abingdon. That was really lovely. And then we cycled home, had another afternoon tea, had a little nap, went on the paddleboards again. And that was the last kind of day of the trip. And then we had one day left before we went home, and it started raining, and we were like, what are we going to do? We're going to go to a National Trust. We're going to go back into Oxford. So we kind of came to the conclusion that we're going to go to a National Trust on the way home. So I decided, I'll wear my big beautiful flowy skirt because it was quite a warm day, but it was also kind of raining, and I thought that would be a lovely outfit to wear, and I was feeling super cute. And then we were like, oh no, actually, we are going to cycle back into Oxford. And I thought, I'll be fine. I can cycle in a skirt. That's what they do in Call the Midwife. If any of you have seen that. So I was cycling along feeling like I was in Call the Midwife. That was one of those shows that me and my mum used to watch together when I was younger. There was one point where I was like, you know what, I actually felt like such a fashionable gal because I managed to tie like a little knot in my skirt. So don't worry, I did not flash anyone, but because it was a bit longer, so it wouldn't end up like, I was like, this is going to get stuck in a chain or something. You guys know, I've already had my tyre fall off my bike. I don't want to have another accident. So anyway, we cycle into Oxford. That's all lovely. Only like a 15-minute trip. Fine, cycling in a skirt. Then we went to some more museums. Oh, also, we... because my boyfriend used to go to Cambridge, and apparently they have this thing where you're like twinned college or that kind of thing, you can get in for free in Oxford. So we had a mooch about there, and he was like, oh my gosh, this college definitely got way more funding than ours. It was huge. Now I haven't been around his college or anything yet, so he's like, when I take you to Cambridge at some stage, you're going to be disappointed because this Oxford one was massive. So we had a little walk around there, and that's one thing that if you do go to Oxford, I would recommend going around one of the colleges because they are stunning, picturesque. It just basically, it's like going to real life Hogwarts in Harry Potter. And all of the gardens are completely immaculate. They had like a whole team there of gardeners, like mowing the lawns every day, doing the garden. It was beautiful. And also this one that we went to, I think it was Magdalen, they had a huge deer park. So it was very strange how you'd be like in the city kind of area of Oxford, you'd go into the college and be like, oh wow, this is all cool, I've been transported to Hogwarts. And then there was just like a massive field that had deer fenced in, and we were like, what on earth? Where have I been transported to? It was incredible. They also had like the river there, so you could go punting on the little punts or the little boats. We didn't do that because they'd all done that so many times before in Cambridge. But anyway, so we had a little nose around their college, and he was like, yeah, theirs is way bigger than ours. But anyway, so that was really cool. And yes, that was pretty much our time. Went to some more museums. Oh yeah, the last thing. So yeah, back to the cycling. He was like, oh, there's our neighbours, they recommended this pub that's a little bit further on from Oxford. Let's go there. And I was like, okay, yep, that's good. You know, did a lot of cycling yesterday. I can do it again in my skirt. Another like hour later of cycling, we ended up at this pub, and I was like, I definitely should not have worn a skirt for cycling. Wearing a skirt for cycling is not very practical, but I did it. It was all good and it was fine. And then we went home, and that was our trip to Oxford. So there we go. So yeah, that one thing that I would take away from this trip is make sure that you do your back tire, actually both tires, on your bike up properly. And if your bike makes a funny noise, check your tires because it might fall off. And on that note, I'm going to finish off today's podcast episode there. I really hope you enjoyed it. I really hope you enjoyed listening to today's episode. Thank you so much again to Red Post for sponsoring the podcast. Go and check out their summer sale at redpostequestrian.co.uk, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!